Some people say that salmon have become perhaps Michigan's most important natural resource. Well, salmon are not native to Michigan, and nearly all of them are raised in hatcheries, so in that sense, they're not natural to Michigan. But they are an important resource, and one that has a very unique background. 40 years ago, the Great Lakes were teeming with fish. Sport fishermen and commercial fishermen shared bountiful harvests until two things happened. Commercial fishing got so competitive that it began cleaning out the commercial fish populations. At the same time, a very sinister critter, the sea lamprey, migrated from the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence Seaway and into the Great Lakes. Michigan's trout streams turned out to be excellent breeding grounds for lampreys, and by the 1950s, these hideous creatures had attached themselves to every lake trout and steelhead trout they could find. Lampreys literally sucked the life juices from a famous, profitable, and productive fishery. Years and years of chemical treatments in lamprey breeding streams finally brought them under control. But then, a little fish called the alewife, which had also straggled into the Great Lakes from the Atlantic Ocean, had a population explosion. Alewives would normally have been kept under control by lake trout, but since the lake trout population was at an all-time low, the alewife population soared to an all-time high. So high that summer die-offs left Michigan's beaches covered with millions of dead fish. But then two fisheries biologists, Dr. Howard Tanner and Dr. Wayne Tody, came up with a unique plan. They proposed obtaining some coho salmon eggs from fish hatcheries on the Pacific coast, hatching them out in the Platte River Fish Hatchery, raising them for a year and a half, and then releasing these 6 inchers into trout streams. If they did this, they theorized that the salmon should find their way into the Great Lakes to eat the alewives. Well, Tanner and Tody thought that these hungry, fast-growing salmon would solve our problems, and the first coho release in 1966 proved them to be right. Our beaches haven't been littered with alewives the way they were in the mid-60s, and the Great Lakes sport fishery was reborn. It's important to remember that fish hatcheries have been the key to the rebirth of the Great Lakes fishery. Natural reproduction plays only a small part. Starting in August and on through the fall, the adult salmon begin their journeys up their home streams to spawn. But the DNR uses weirs on several major spawning streams to intercept the salmon so their eggs can be taken and hatched under ideal conditions. But in the streams, spawning continues into the winter. Natural reproduction would work all right, but the problem is Michigan doesn't have enough large spawning streams to raise enough salmon for the Great Lakes. 90% of our salmon have to be raised in hatcheries because our spawning streams can only provide about 10%. After the salmon spawn, they die. Their mission has been accomplished. But the eggs they leave behind in the gravel incubate for about 6 weeks before hatching, and the baby salmon stay down in the gravel for a few more weeks until they absorb their yolk sacs. When they finally emerge, they have to face another 14 or 16 months in the stream, looking for food and trying to avoid being used for food by larger fish. Very few survive. The salmon in the hatcheries don't face these risks. Most of them survive the year and a half, growing to about 6 inches in length. In April, millions of these salmon are released in selected rivers and streams all over Michigan. The streams they're released in are the streams they'll come back to when they mature after a year and a half in the Great Lakes. A few of these little male salmon will mature during the summer. They're called jacks, and they'll grow to somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds by the fall when they return to spawn. Most of the salmon will spend 2 summers in the lakes before maturing. A normal mature coho will weigh somewhere between 10 and 15 pounds, while a 3-year-old Chinook or king salmon will average closer to 25 or 30. And believe me, catching a 30-pound salmon is an experience you won't soon forget. Action like this is why so many Michigan anglers are hoping that coho, chinook, steelhead trout, and even the new Atlantic salmon will be making many happy returns up our Michigan rivers and streams in the years ahead.